Final round in the regular season and last chance saloon for some teams. My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. This season has honestly flown by. I can't believe, it feels like just a few weeks ago that we were, well, at least I was shocked by the fact that, the Dragons had beaten Ospreys in the first round of the season, and it looked like it was going to be a competitive season. It certainly was. Unfortunately not for the Dragons, but certainly for pretty much every other team in the league. So what we're going to do as usual is we're going to go through all of the games that I have this weekend, talk about the forms that the teams are in, also talk about who I think is going to win, but on top of that, teams who are in the mix for the final eight, what they potentially need from their games, and also, teams who are maybe already qualified, how they're looking in terms of, their ranking or their seeding for the knockout stages as well. Okay. So let me just make sure that I have everything pulled up here. Yes, we do. Okay, so we're going to start with the first game, which is on Friday, May 16th, and it is a 6 o'clock kickoff if you're in Ireland or the UK. I believe that's 8 p.m. in South Africa, but check your local sources just to be sure on that. So this game is DHL Stormers versus Cardiff Rugby. It's 5th in the league versus 9th in the league, and it's at the DHL Stadium. So we look at the forms of the teams. Stormers, they won 5 of the last 7. Cardiff, 3 of the last 7. And, Stormers with a run of 3 wins on the trot. Cardiff have won 2 of the last 3, which put them in, decent position to potentially make the playoffs. But they know they've got to get something out of this game. So that run for the Stormers, they had a loss against the Lions. Then they beat the Bulls. They beat the Scarlets, lost against Ulster. Then they beat Connacht, Benetton, and last time out the Dragons. So, decent run for them. And you're thinking they're probably going to finish 5th, right? They're not going to finish any higher than 5th, but out of the teams that are kind of in that second tranche of teams, as it were, I think they've been the best of the rest. For Cardiff then, their run loss against Connacht, then a loss to Leinster, then they beat the Lions, lost against Benetton, then wins against Ospreys and Munster, brought them back into contention for the playoffs, and the last time out then a loss against the Bulls, and getting no points out of that game as well has put them in a very precarious position there in 9th. So let's talk about, what these teams really need. So Stormers, a win guarantees them 4th. Again, they don't need a bonus point or anything. They're not going to go any higher than they are, but potentially they could drop, but they're not going to, they pretty much made the playoffs at this stage because they're on 50 points. And you got Benetton and Munster who play each other on 46. And Cardiff on 46 in 7th, 8th and 9th. So potentially with bonus points and stuff, they might, it'd be a weird combination of things really for them to miss out on the playoffs. So, for this one, I think you can pretty much say that they're through, but obviously they want to be as high ranking as they can to, they know they're going to be away in the quarterfinals, but they don't want to be away to Leinster or whoever's coming second, because the team who's coming in second are probably going to be the form team coming into the playoffs, and it's looking like it's going to be one of probably the Bulls, but the Bulls or maybe even if the Sharks could pick them, but yeah, they don't want to be going there, even though it would be a game in South Africa, which wouldn't be too bad for them, but still, they're former champions, and they they want to get back to the final again and potentially lift that trophy again, be the first 2-time champions of its competition in the URC format. Obviously, there's been plenty of 2-time champions previously over the other iterations, Pro 14, Pro 12, Celtic League, etc. But yeah, that's the Stormers. Then Cardiff, they're down in 9th place. So realistically, I think they're going to need a win out of this to qualify. Now, one thing that certainly helps them is Benetton and Munster are playing each other. So potentially, Cardiff could lose but get a bonus point or 2 bonus points and then finish above whoever loses that game, as long as that team didn't get, a bonus point. Like, basically, Cardiff have to better the number of match points that the loser of that game gets. Now, the other thing with that, though, is they've also, if that's a scenario where they've lost, they've also got to hope that Edinburgh lose against Ulster. So, that's another thing for them to consider. So, if they do lose, they've got to get something out of the game. If they don't get anything out of the game, they're gone. There's no other way around that. They're currently on the same match points as the others, and if they're losing, they're not improving their points total for the league, then they're sadly going to miss out. So they know they have to get something out of the game. They know that a win's going to guarantee them qualification. And again, that's because they get 4 points, so they're going to go up to 50 points. And then the loser of Munster versus Benetton, at the most they can get to is 48. So Cardiff, if they could pull off a win here, they know they're through. So that's massive motivation for them. But there is an avenue there for them with a loss to get through as well. But again, it means, the result of the Edinburgh game has to go their way, i.e. Edinburgh have to lose, and the loser of the Munster-Benetton game has to get less match points than they do out of that game. Okay, so having said all that, who do I think is going to win this one? Have to be honest and have to say, I think it's going to be the Stormers. They've been in decent form recently. They had very up and down a lot of the season, but they've won 5 of the last 6 games. And this one, again, you don't want to, your last game in the regular season, you don't want to lose, even though they're pretty much already qualified, because you don't want to be going into knockout stages on the back of a loss. You want to be going in best foot forward on the back of a win. So I think the Stormers are going to win that. And, Cardiff, they're going to have to go some, I think, to get something out of the game as well. Whether that's a losing bonus point or try bonus point or both. They really have to produce a performance. And we've seen them this year do that. Let's see if they can do it on Friday. Okay, so the next game then is also on Friday. And this one is at 7:35. It's Edinburgh versus Ulster. It is 10th versus 12th. It's at the Hive Stadium. So Edinburgh in this one, they know it's a must win, but let's talk about the form of the teams and we'll come back to that in a second. So Edinburgh, they've won 3 of their last 7 with 1 draw in there as well. Ulster have won 3 of the last 7, but they've lost the last 3 on the trot. So really, finishing this season poorly and kind of finishing the season the way they started it, because recently they've been shown, a bit of improvement, but definitely, there's a lot to do with that squad to get them ready to challenge or at least, be higher up the table next year. So Edinburgh, their run of games, they started with a loss against Zebre, and, a lot of teams have lost against Zebre this year, but, I think their games against Zebre were particularly damaging to them, because if they'd gotten more out of those, maybe, they'd be the team that would be, up there already in the top 8, looking to basically cement that position rather than chasing. After then, lost to Munster, a win against Munster by 6 points. So, that was a big shock. I remember that when that happened. Then they lose against Benetton. Then they come back with a win against the Dragons, handy win there. Then a 1 point loss against the Hollywood Bet Sharks. Then they draw against Zebre as well. So, played Zebre twice in 6 games and couldn't beat them either time. And after that, then that win against Connacht, where, fair play to them, because, it was kind of up and down for both teams in that game, but they were the ones that were able to produce that finish at the end. But like last year, where they went into the last game knowing they needed a win and it was against Benetton away to qualify, and it didn't perform. Now this year they have to perform, but unlike that one where the win was pretty much guaranteed, passage into the final 8. This year, they'll have to win and hope for other results to go their way as well. Ulster then, their run of games, so they lost against Benetton, then they had a good run, beat the Scarlets, the Dragons, and then the Stormers, all, pretty close games, 2-point win, 4-point win, 4-point win. Then lost against Leinster, lost against the Sharks, and then lost against Munster as well. So, Ulster, nothing really for them to play for other than pride in this. The highest they can finish in the league is 11th. The Ospreys currently there in 11th place. So, for them, it's about showing the potential that's there in the squad for next year, and also showing that, this squad, when the chips are down and they're facing adversity, that they've gotten a bit of steel in them. We haven't really seen that this year from them. Even though there have been improvements in performance, we still haven't seen that whole thing of, maybe they're down a bit and then they come back and win. We've seen teams go the other way against them, where they were winning, like they were winning 70-0 against the Sharks, right? And then they ended up losing that game. So, definitely need to get a bit of steel, a bit of leadership in that squad. And, maybe now it's a chance for players to step up and, show what they can do for next year. Obviously, there's a lot of players leaving as well, but it's the same for every club, at this stage of the season. So, again, having said all that, let's talk about Edinburgh, what they need, and, what's their path to the final 8. So, first of all, they've got to win. That's, there is a scenario where they could draw and get a try bonus point and potentially qualify, but that's a rare thing. But if they did, let's say they did do that, right? We'll start with that one first. So that draw, they'd have to get a try bonus point as well, which would bring them on to 47 match points, right? Then Cardiff would have to get 0 match points against the Stormers, and the loser of Munster Benetton would have to get 0 match points out of that. So no bonus point try and no losing bonus point for either, the loser of Munster Benetton or Cardiff in their game against the Stormers. So that's a route through for them. But, even though they drew against Zebre 2 games ago, not really likely they're going to draw this one, right? So with that out of the way, their genuine path through, I think, is a win. And in terms of, getting that win, if they get a win with a bonus point, then, it makes things a bit simpler for them. Simply because if they got a win, they'd be on 48 points, which would mean that potentially the loser of Munster Benetton could get 2 losing bonus points and be the same match points as them. And then Cardiff could get 2 losing bonus points and be in the same match points as them as well, which means that, they may not qualify. But if they win with a bonus point, they go up to 49 points, which means that if Cardiff lose and, if Cardiff lose, then they would qualify. And the reason for that is because, again, they go on to 49 points. Cardiff losing, the most they could get would be 48. And then we know one of Benetton and Munster is going to lose their game. Again, rare chance of there being a draw on one of those teams ending up, or both those teams ending up on 49 points with try bonus points. But, again, draws so rare, we can't factor them in too much. So Edinburgh, basically, to give themselves the best chance of qualifying, got to win with a bonus point, and then got to hope that Cardiff have lost to the Stormers. They'll obviously know by the time they'll know, I think, by about half-time in their game, is it? Because the other game kicks off at 6 o'clock, and this is at 7:35. So the other game will be kind of coming towards the end when these guys are kicking off, so that somebody will tell them by half-time, whether Cardiff have lost, and then they'll know then, what basically what they need, which would be good for them. But in this one, I want to back Ulster because they're an Irish team, but I'm going to go for Edinburgh, even though Edinburgh, I don't know when the last time they actually strung 2 wins together was, and this would be 2 wins on the bounce, actually 3 games unbeaten on the bounce for them. But I'm going to go for Edinburgh to win that one. Okay, on to our next game then, and the next game is Munster versus Benetton. And this is a big one for this weekend, So it's 8 versus 7. It's at Virgin Media Park, so it's down in Cork. So Munster had their last game with Thomond last week, and now this is their last game in Munster, unless they progress and they end up, let's say, with a home semi-final or something, which is certainly a possibility for them, but they're going to have to finish higher up the totem pole than they currently are for that to be a possibility, because they're in 8th place, Benetton in 7th. But for these two teams, very simple, at least for the winner: win the game and you qualify. Couldn't be any simpler than that, really, because if you let's take Benetton as an example. Benetton in 7th place on 46 match points. You got Munster and Cardiff both on the same amount of points as well, and then Edinburgh 2 points back. So Benetton win, they get to 50 points. Okay, that immediately rules out Edinburgh being able to overtake them. Okay, so that's one team out of the scenario with them, because they can only get to 49. Then Munster can't catch them either, because they'll have lost the game. So max they're getting is 2 points, so they're going to get to 48. So Benetton, then it doesn't matter to them if they win the game what Cardiff do, because even if Cardiff win, let's say with a bonus point and leapfrog them, Cardiff would finish 7th and Benetton finished 8th. So they qualify for the playoffs. So for Benetton and Munster, it's the same deal. Win the game and you qualify. Lose the game and then it becomes more complicated. Lose the game and you're basically hoping for, first of all, Cardiff not to get bonus points against the Stormers, but basically what you have to do is match Cardiff's, bonus points in that scenario. If you're the team that's lost, you got to hope that Cardiff lose, because if they win, then you're out of the reckoning. If they lose, then you've just got to make sure that you have as many losing bonus points as they do, and then you qualify. So that's a scenario for both of those teams. So let's have a look at their form coming into this one before we make a prediction. So Munster have won 3 of the last 7, but they've been up and down in that run. Benetton won 5 of the last 7. So they're actually one of the form teams in the league at the minute, and they've been just quietly going about their business, at this stage where we've seen so many teams coming and going, being up in the top 8 and then dropping off, the likes of, Ospreys, the Lions from early in the season as well. And then, teams like Cardiff, who were higher up the league earlier on as well. So, Benetton just doing the business in the background there. So Munster, for them, their sequence: a win against Scarlets, then losses against Edinburgh and Glasgow, then a win against Connacht, then losses against the Bulls and Cardiff, and then a win against Ulster. And then Benetton, their run: win against Ulster, loss against Connacht, then wins against Edinburgh, Cardiff, and the Lions. Then they lost against the Stormers, and then they won against Glasgow. So, really, and that performance against Glasgow last week as well was brilliant. Like, they won 33 points to 7, so very comfortable in that, and that's put them in a brilliant position here, and it's really affected Glasgow as well in terms of where they're potentially going to finish in the table. So Benetton in brilliant form coming in. Munster again patchy. Line out is an absolute mess for them too. So Benetton probably going to go after a set piece, as a lot of teams have been doing recently. Munster's, the back line has started to look a bit better. It's still not in that form that they had 2 seasons ago, where they just looked on it all the time. Now it's a case of, they can find gaps, find spaces, etc., and get things going, but it takes a bit more effort, and there are a little bit, a few more mistakes in there too, and they're going to have to be better. They're going to definitely have to step up against this Benetton team, even though they're at home. And my prediction for this one, I'm letting my heart rule my head, I think, in this one, but I'm going to go for a Munster win in this one. And, given my other predictions, it means that Benetton are going to miss out. And that's a bit sad, because, Benetton, they did well in the Champions Cup this year, and I'd love to see them in there again next year, because that's what teams need, is to, not just one flash in the pan season in the Champions Cup, but to be able to build on it season by season by season. So let's see what happens there. I'm hoping Munster get through, but I'm kind of at the same time hoping both teams get through. But looking at predictions I've made, I'm kind of predicting that, that's not going to happen. Okay, on to the next game then. Let me pull it up here. So we're on to the Saturday games now. And this is a 2:00 kickoff. It's the Vodacom Bulls versus the Dragons, the 2nd versus 16th at Loftus Versfeld. And you pretty much know what the prediction is already in this one, right? It's not too difficult to work it out, but let's go through the form, and then just in case you don't know, I'll tell you what our prediction is anyway. So the Bulls won 6 of the last 7, and Dragons have lost all 7 in their sequence, and they've actually lost 16 in a row in this competition. Just that one win in the first round against the Ospreys. Okay, so the Bulls in their sequence, they beat the Lions, then lost against the Stormers just narrowly by 3 points, then 5 wins on the trot. They beat Leinster, then Zebre, then Munster, then Glasgow, and then Cardiff. So a really good sequence there for them. Dragons, the team to 17s, they lost against Glasgow, Zebre, Ulster, Edinburgh, Scarlets, Ospreys, and the Stormers. So Dragons, nothing to play for other than some kind of pride, but we haven't seen them produce any kind of pride at all. Obviously, new coaching team in there since Di Flanagan departed. You're looking at them really again for next season. What's going to happen with them next year? Are they going to start showing the kind of incremental improvement that Zebre have over the last few years, or is it just going to be the same deal with Dragons? And will it just give more kind of ammunition to those in Welsh Rugby that are saying we should reduce the number of regions, and the Dragons are the team to go, even though Cardiff went into administration and got taken over by the WRU, which I wouldn't wish on anybody. It's very sad, like the current state of Welsh rugby, it's not good, and I wish it was better, because I really do feel like I know there's a lot of people who, Welsh people who want to leave the URC and join the Premiership with the English because of proximity and local rivalries, etc. But I feel like the URC is much better with the Welsh teams in there, even if they're maybe not as competitive as a lot of the other nations, but they certainly have been more competitive this year, and they showed signs of it last year as well. But these things, they come and go. Like you go back to the times where Scarlets were winning the league as well. There are cycles, and at the moment for Welsh rugby, they're kind of at the bottom of a cycle, but they're going to come back. And I want the Welsh teams in the URC when they do come back, because this league that has been absolutely fantastic this year is just going to get better and better and better. And I want them to be part of it, because eventually, at least fingers crossed, Welsh teams, Welsh players and Welsh supporters are going to see the benefit of being in this league as it improves and standards are driven up. It's going to happen for them as well. Whereas if they go to the Premiership, I don't know what's going to happen there with them, whether the same thing is going to happen over there or whether it's just going to be more struggle. So fingers crossed, we can keep the Dragons and we can keep the Welsh regions in the URC as well. That would be my one big wish for the future of the URC. So having said all that, prediction for this game, again, not controversial. The Bulls are going to win. They're going to win handily. I think everyone is going to say that, and therefore the Bulls are going to finish second in the league. So all they need is a win. Well, pretty much all they need out of this is 2 points to guarantee that they're going to finish second, because Glasgow are 4 points behind them in the league. But yeah, we pretty much know Bulls are going to win this, and they're going to be number 2 seeds going into the playoffs. Okay, on to our next game then. So the next Saturday game is Emirates Lions versus Ospreys. This is a 4:15 kickoff. It's 13th versus 11th. It's at Emirates Airlines Park. So this is one of 2 games this weekend where neither team are in contention for the playoffs. So Ospreys are in 11th place on 38 points. They are the first team, in the league standings at the moment, or the highest team in the league standings, who can't make the playoffs, because the maximum they can get is 43, and that line there already is at 46. So they're below that. And then the Lions then in 13th place on 35 points, so 3 points back. So depending on losing bonus points, the winner of this game is probably going to finish above the other team. Like, obviously, if Ospreys win, it doesn't matter for losing bonus points. But if the Lions win, they could win, let's say, with a 4-point win, and Ospreys get 2 losing bonus points, and Ospreys would be ahead of them. So, a little mini battle there between those 2 teams in that one. And let's look at the form coming into this as well. So the Lions have won 2 of the last 7. Ospreys have won 3 of the last 7. So not in fantastic form, but the kind of, at this part of the season, the wins have kind of consolidated into a few of the higher up teams. Really, we're seeing a lot of teams with long runs, or like 5 and 6 wins out of 7, and then teams like these with 2 and 3 wins out of 7. So the Lions in their sequence win against the Sharks, then 4 losses on the bounce. So Sharks again, a loss that time though. Cardiff, Glasgow, and then Benetton. Then they get a win against Connacht, and they lose against Scarlets. So they've won only once in the last 6 games. Then Ospreys, their sequence, loss against Leinster, then 2 wins on the bounce, Glasgow and in Connacht, then losses against Scarlets and Cardiff, then a win against the Dragons, and then a loss against the Sharks. So, Lions only won from the last 6, and Ospreys won from the last 4. So, again, not great form coming in here. The Lions, it's disappointing really, because this season I really felt like this was a chance for the Lions to emerge as, a force in this competition, because, since the inception of the URC, they've basically been the other South African team. If you go back in Super Rugby, kind of a decade or so, the Lions were a big deal. But in the URC, we haven't seen that from them at all. There is a lot of talent in that squad, but there just isn't the staying power to produce it over a season at the minute. So it feels like they've definitely got to add to that squad for next season to be able to, compete in this league all the way through the season, and not just rely on a good start at home, but being able to pick up points away from home. And the fact that their home form has fallen away as well towards the end of the season will be a big disappointment for them. And then if we look at the Ospreys, so, the brilliant end to the season last season, that 2% chance or wherever it was to get into the playoffs, and they made it. Sadly missed out on the Champions Cup because the Sharks won the Challenge Cup, but still making the playoffs was brilliant. But then start of the season, then they were poor, lost against the Dragons, and then was it followed up by, I think they had a draw somewhere, right? I think maybe a draw against Benetton, and didn't really get themselves going. And then they kind of flirted with the top 8 for a little while and then fell away again. So, not as good as they were last year, and another team definitely looking to maybe, sort some things out over, the off season and come back bigger, better, stronger next year as well. And hopefully they can do that. So my prediction for this one, Lions home form has dropped away, but I think last game at home for the season, they're going to produce, they're going to get a win. It may be a close run thing. I'm kind of thinking Ospreys might get a losing bonus point out as well. So that's what I'm predicting, the Lions with a narrow victory in that one. Okay, on to the next one, and it's the other game where the two teams involved have pretty much nothing to play for in terms of playoffs at least. And it's a 5 o'clock kickoff. It's Zebre Parma versus Connacht. It's 15th versus 14th. It's at the Stadio Sergio Lanfranchi. And yeah, this one, I think it's going to be interesting in this one, because you have like two teams who in past seasons would have been down there in the bottom, like 2 or 3 teams, and that's what they are now, right? But at the moment, it's completely different contextually compared to previous seasons, because they would have been adrift of everyone else right down there, right? And both these teams have made improvements, and Zebre certainly this year have just come on leaps and bounds. Absolutely amazing. Like 5 wins and a draw, which is actually a better record than Connacht. It's just Connacht have gotten more bonus points than them. So, that's pretty much the difference between them is, Connacht picked up 15 bonus points to Zebre's 7th. Otherwise, these two teams would be neck and neck. Zebre, with a bonus point win, they're on 29 points. They won't be able to overtake Connacht. So there's nothing in terms of league position. They're guaranteed to finish in 15th, whatever happens in this game. Connacht then, for them, they could finish as high as 11th. But that would mean that basically for them to finish that high, they'd have to win first of all, probably with a bonus point. Ospreys would have to lose to the Lions, and then the Lions would have to not get a bonus point. So Connacht get to 40 points, Lions get to 39, and then Ospreys hopefully don't get any points, or at least only one losing bonus point. They would be on 39 as well, so Connacht be ahead of them. And Ulster would have to lose to Edinburgh and not get more than one losing bonus point out of that as well. So that would be the scenario for Connacht to finish as high as 11th. I think, if they win this one, they're going to finish probably, 12th in the league, honestly. 12th or 13th, depending on, again, the winners of those games, because Edinburgh, Ospreys, Ulster, and the Lions are all kind of close together there. And that one, obviously, Edinburgh not going to drop any lower than 10th, but Ospreys, Ulster, and Lions kind of all intermingled in there in terms of, the order that they're going to finish in. That's going to have an impact on Connacht if they win the game. So for Connacht, the thing is, they're away from home, right? They lost last week at home to Edinburgh, and Zebre rested their entire team against Leinster to target this particular game. So, in true Connacht fashion, I'm going to predict Connacht are going to win this game. And, so Zebre, they're targeting 6 wins in the season, and that would be amazing. It would be so good to kind of just stick it to the people who were talking about at the start of the season how Zebre are going to get wound up. They've already pretty much, decided that there's going to be a new franchise in Rome instead, and Zebre pack your bags and leave. And for me, that was a crazy thing to even be thinking about, because what it tells me is that the people who are making those decisions are not making it based on what they've seen from Zebre. They're making it based on whatever, whoever's behind the idea of having a team in Rome instead of Zebre. First of all, I don't know why isn't it in addition to Zebre, right? It would be my question in terms of just expansion for the league. Because potentially, Black Line from Georgia could be coming in as well. And then you've got to even the numbers out somewhere with that as well, So, but put that aside for the moment. But it tells me that whoever is making the decision is making it on whatever promises, guarantees, or financials, whatever is coming from whoever is behind the idea of a Rome team, right? It's not based on Zebre and what they've been doing over the last few seasons. Because if it was, then there wouldn't be any discussion. If you followed Zebre through those seasons, then this season shouldn't be as big of a shock as it has been to a lot of people. Because you'll have noticed that they've been building a squad. They've been recruiting very, very smartly. They've got a decent squad there, and they've been competitive at home for the last few seasons against teams. 2 seasons ago, they almost beat Leinster in the opening game of the season. And then they start knocking over teams at home. Then this year, not just knocking over teams at home, knocking over teams away, going on a 3-game winning streak. Like, that's unheard of for Zebre. And just doing absolutely brilliantly and producing, developing players. And also, again, the recruitment has been very smart. And you'd imagine now in the off season, the recruitment's going to be good as well. I have a feeling next year there might be a bit of a dip from Zebre, and that's simply because they're under pressure this year in terms of people saying, well, you're gone, unless you produce something amazing. So obviously everybody, coaches, players, support staff, whoever, have been under that kind of, pressure of your livelihood could be gone if you don't produce. And therefore maybe they've gone a little bit beyond where they would have done this season, but I still think this season they would have won multiple games, whatever the situation was, right? But then next season, there might be that's just relax, like the pressure's off now, and maybe, they'll have, next year it might be maybe 3 or 4 wins or something in the league, but it certainly won't be, 0 or 1, I don't think. So, but for this one, again, my prediction is going to be that Connacht are going to pull this off, and they're going to get the win rather than Zebre. But if we're looking at kind of the form coming in, so Zebre have won 2 of their last 7, but a draw as well. Connacht won 2 of the last 7. Neither of these teams have won of the last 5. So whoever wins is obviously going to break that a 5-game winless streak, and the other team obviously will be on a 6-game one. So Zebre, they beat Edinburgh, then Dragons, then losses against the Sharks, the Bulls, and Glasgow. Then that draw against Edinburgh, then a very heavy defeat, 71 points against Leinster, but you can kind of dismiss that simply because they sent completely second team for that. But they should be wary because Leinster have done that so many times at this time of the year, and it's never worked out for them. So let's see if it works out for Zebre. Connacht, they had wins against Cardiff, then Benetton, then loss against Ospreys, Munster, Stormers, the Lions, and Edinburgh. So for this note, I'm predicting that we're going to have a Connacht win. Right, on to the next game then. So 6:30 kickoff on Saturday, and is the Hollywood Bet Sharks versus Scarlets. It's 4th versus 6th, and it's at the Hollywood Bets Kings Park Stadium. Okay, so even though 4th versus 6th looks like it's close in the table, the Sharks, they are actually 10 points ahead of the Scarlets, and the Sharks can't finish any lower than 4th in the league. Potentially, they could finish 2nd, but we'll talk about that scenario in a minute. And in the Scarlets, the highest they can finish is 5th, and the lowest they can finish is 10th, depending on results. So, let's look at the form, and then we'll talk about the different scenarios. So, Sharks won 5 of the last 7, and they've won the last 3 on the trot. Scarlets have won 4 of the last 7, but those 4 have been the last 4 on the trot. So Sharks in their sequence lost to the Lions, then they beat the Lions, they beat Zebre, lost to Leinster, they beat Edinburgh, Ulster, and then Ospreys. And the Scarlets, their sequence, losses against Munster, Ulster, and the Stormers, followed by wins against Ospreys, Dragons, Leinster, and the Lions. And yes, Scarlets, one of only 2 teams in the league this year to beat Leinster. So, that is a feather in their cap, certainly. And it doesn't matter, which Leinster team it was they beat. It was still Leinster Rugby, and there's not going to be any asterisks beside that result in the record books either. So, coming in here, I think, confident, and the fact that as well, they got that win against the Lions last week. So they got a win in South Africa, but kind of a double-edged sword, really, because we see teams going down to South Africa and then they get their win, and then there's almost a subconscious kind of job done kind of feeling about it, right? And then they lose the second of their games on their tour. But Scarlets, they're going to be laser focused on this because it's the last game of the season, and they know, that potentially they're going to have to get something out of this. But it will kind of depend on other results as well, because by the time these guys kick off, the Scarlets will know whether they need what they need out of this game. Potentially they don't need anything out of the game. If other results, like if Cardiff and Edinburgh both lose, then Scarlets have qualified, so they don't need to worry about getting anything out of this game. But still, again, if you're getting into the playoffs, you want to go in with confidence on the back of a win. So I don't think there'll be any kind of, we're through anyway, so let's not try too hard in the game. There might be a little bit of switching off just because of relief from it, but certainly there won't be any kind of, let's save ourselves for the playoffs, I don't think. So let's talk about the scenarios for both of the teams. So we're going to start with the Sharks. So Sharks, again, for them, they'll know what the Bulls have done. So they'll know whether they can finish in second or not, right? By the time this kicks off. And after that, then, if the Bulls have won, they know that the highest they can finish then is third. And they want to give themselves the best chance of that. And the best chance of that will be a bonus point win and put pressure on Glasgow, who are then playing after them against Leinster. So that's the one game after this. So they're not going to know the result of that. So going to be a little bit in the dark. So not the same as the Scarlets, who will have pretty much a full knowledge of where everybody else is at that stage, where they are in the table, and whether they're in or outside of the top 8, and therefore what they need out of the game. So for the Sharks, pretty much they got to aim for a bonus point win, because if they get a bonus point win, and let's say the Bulls somehow had lost and got no points at all from their game, then they'd be on the same points as them, and depending on points difference and stuff like that, they might be able to pip them into second place. Honestly, not a very likely scenario. The likelier scenario is get a bonus point win in this one and potentially pip Glasgow to third place. I think that's more likely, because at least the bonus point win, even if Glasgow win their game, Glasgow only 1 point ahead, so they both be on the same amount of points. And then again, it comes down to when we go down through, points difference, etc., to decide who is going to actually finish in third. So that's what they've got to do to give themselves the best chance to get through, or not to get through, to get a higher seeding, should I say. So for them, potentially second place, more realistically a shot at third place, but guaranteed fourth place. Then on to Scarlets. So the Scarlets, again, the highest they can finish is fifth. So if they win and Stormers lose, they're going to finish in fifth place. If they win and Stormers have won, they're going to finish in sixth, because Benetton, Munster, Cardiff, all in 46. So there's a 2 point gap, which means that even if they win without a bonus point, the other teams can't catch them with a bonus point win. So pretty clear on that one in terms of winning. In terms of losing, then again, they're going to know before kickoff, what the deal is for them. But ideally, what they're looking for is, first of all, for them, an Edinburgh loss. So Edinburgh loss means Edinburgh can't catch them. Same with Cardiff. If Cardiff and Edinburgh lose, it doesn't matter what happens. Munster, Benetton losing bonus points or wherever, or draws or anything like that Scarlets will qualify. And then in that scenario, that's kind of the scenario where they don't have to worry about winning. And then also with, for them, basically, even if, let's say, Cardiff won their game, okay, so Cardiff potentially leapfrogging them, Scarlets have lost, Cardiff leapfrogged them, the winner of Munster Benetton leapfrogged them as well, but then that's where losing bonus points and stuff come in, that if they get a losing bonus point out of their game against the Sharks, they're guaranteed pretty much getting through to the final 8 as well in that scenario. And then they could lose and get absolutely nothing out of the game, as long as Cardiff have lost, Edinburgh haven't, won with a bonus point, and the points difference is in their favour, and then the loser of Munster Benetton as well, isn't getting 2 bonus points to potentially leapfrog them on points difference. So for Scarlets, there's plenty of scenarios for them to get through, even with a loss. So of that kind of group from 6th down to 10th that are really kind of vying, like the teams who aren't yet guaranteed qualification, they're absolutely in the strongest position. And, I won't be surprised if before the kicking off that they've already qualified for the playoffs. So, with all that said, what's my prediction for this? Well, both teams in really good form, like 3 wins on the bounce and 4 wins on the bounce. But I think the Sharks are going to pull this one out and potentially finish in 3rd seeds as well for the playoffs. And Scarlets may end up, currently 6th, may end up in 7th or 8th maybe. And there's potential actually for, with these 2 teams, I think it'd be, if Scarlets stay in 6th, right, and the Sharks potentially move up to 3rd, then I'm pretty sure these 2 teams will actually be playing off against each other, then to be repeating this fixture in the playoffs. So that would be an interesting kind of dynamic as well. But yeah, my prediction is for the Sharks to win that one. And then on to the final game of the regular season, 7:35 kickoff. And this is Leinster versus Glasgow. It's 1st versus 3rd at the Aviva Stadium. For so long during the season, this would have been 1st versus 2nd, but Glasgow, with that slip up last weekend against Benetton, and now they're really scrambling for their lives, really. They're obviously going to qualify, but not in as strong a position as we thought they were, especially with them being the defending champions. So let's talk about, the former teams coming in. Leinster have won 5 of the last 7, but they've lost 2 games in that sequence, and they're the only 2 games in the URC that they've lost this season. And then Glasgow have won 4 of the last 7, but they've lost the last 2 on the bounce. So they're really coming into this game on poor form. And then you couple that with, not performing against Leinster in that quarterfinal, quarterfinal of the Champions Cup as well. Maybe there's a bit for that in terms of motivation for them, but also it's a poor run of results for them and performances for them that they've got to lift their game for this. So let's look at the sequence of the teams. Leinster win against Ospreys, then Cardiff, then the first loss of the season against the Bulls, then they win against the Sharks and Ulster, then they lose against the Scarlets, and then they win against Zebre by 71 points. And obviously, you can't read too much into that. It was the pretty strong Leinster team versus Zebre's second team, but as many people have said, Leinster could have, against that particular Zebre team, Leinster could have sent pretty much anyone that's in their squad out, and they would have won that one. Glasgow then in their sequence, win against the Dragons, lost against the Ospreys, win against Munster, the Lions and Zebre, then losses against the Bulls, and then Benetton. And that Benetton one would have really stung because they didn't perform at all, and it was a really good chance for them just to keep the Bulls at bay, not really at arm's length, at bay, and stay a point ahead of them maybe in the league, but they weren't able to do that. And now, by the time this match kicks off, they're going to know whether the potential even is there to finish second. Because for me, I don't think it will be. I think the Bulls will have that win in the bag. So then Glasgow will be looking to basically stay third in the league, but they may have fallen behind the Sharks by the time the Sharks game finishes, because these 2 games it's one of these ones as well where they're going to overlap a little bit. The last few minutes of the Sharks Scarlets game, actually the last half of the Sharks Scarlets game will be on during the first half of that Leinster Glasgow game as well. So there's no kind of pre-knowledge for them before kickoff, other than what the current score is in that game, whether the Sharks are going to leapfrog them before their own game finishes or not. So Glasgow will go into this game thinking they need to win. As defending champions, they slipped up. They probably almost certainly lost second seeding. They don't want to lose third seeding as well. They want to finish as high as they can. And especially when you think with that fourth seeding, their opposition is almost certainly going to be the Stormers. And that's going to be a very tough game for, a team that will be coming in the back of 3 losses in this competition on the bounce. And yeah, that's a hard one for them. They have to lift themselves up, and even after that, potentially win that, and then it's an away semi-final for them as well. And who knows where that semi-final could be. They potentially could be actually heading back to the Aviva to play Leinster in that semi-final too. So there's that to consider as well. But a lot, other than obviously finishing third, for it to be in their own hands, they've got, if they get a bonus point win, then they're definitely going to finish third. So that's the scenario for them. And if the Sharks get a bonus point against the Scarlets, then Glasgow, they pretty much got to get a bonus point themselves, right, to pip them. If the Sharks don't get a bonus point, then just a win would be enough for them to qualify, or not to qualify, to finish third. And then after that, then if both teams lose, they basically got to match or better the Sharks in terms of their match points to guarantee that they're going to finish third. So, and again, by halftime, they're going to know what the result of that other game is, and that will maybe shape how the second half goes for them in terms of obviously how they're doing themselves, obviously, as well as is going to shape that too. But it'll give them a bit more clarity on things. And then Leinster guaranteed number 1 seeds, but they've had a few slip-ups lately, and now they've got to produce a performance. It's all well and good going out and hockeying, Zebre's second or third team or wherever it was, but this one now, they're against the defending champions. This is the only trophy they can potentially win this season. After all, kind of the whole thing of bringing in Barrett, etc., to win the Champions Cup didn't happen for them. Now they've got to refocus and go for this, and that means pick a strong team for this one, get a win, go into those playoffs then in good form, and take on whoever it may be. Your likely opponents. It's going to be almost certainly one of Benetton, Munster, Cardiff, or Edinburgh finishing 8th. Scarlets potentially could finish there as well, but it's going to be certainly a home quarterfinal that they'll be expected to win. But again, they've been expected to win this competition since its inception, and it hasn't happened for them. So they've got to pick a strong team. They've got to go out with a win, and they've got to just keep picking their strongest team every week until either they get knocked out or they got to that final and potentially they've lifted the trophy. So that's the scenario for Leinster as well. And because of that, I think it's going to be tougher for Glasgow, because certainly in another scenario, if you went back last year or the year before with Leinster, you could absolutely see, Leinster, let's say they were in the Champions Cup final, they might say, okay, well, let's pick a weakened team in this one, rest all of our, first team players, and then Glasgow have a much better chance of turning them over in that scenario. And then Leinster probably make the same mistake as they have so many years in a row and go in undercooked for their playoff games. So hopefully, as a Leinster fan, Leinster actually, pick a strong team. And on that basis, I'm going to go for a Leinster win, given that, Glasgow have been in poor form recently as well. So Glasgow, I don't know whether they're going to be able to rediscover that spark for the playoffs or not. When we look at when we look at kind of the other teams who, have won this competition, like the Stormers won it in like the first year, right? Then they got to the final the next year, but they lost against Munster. Then Munster couldn't repeat their trick and make it to the final. So are Glasgow gonna be more Munster-ish, as it were, or are they going to be like the Stormers, where they at least back up, winning the competition by reappearing in the final next year? That's kind of for the future. But for now, I think it's going to be a Leinster win in that one. And then Glasgow are going to have to sort themselves out for the knockout stages. Okay, so that's our look ahead towards or for the last round. So it's been kind of longer than I normally go through. So hopefully you guys have stuck with me all the way through. But there was a lot of stuff to go through, and I didn't want to, just focus on the Irish teams or just my team Leinster or whatever, in terms of going through what was involved in each of them as well, because some of these teams, obviously after this weekend, aren't going to be playing again this season. So I wanted to kind of give a little summary of how I feel, where those teams are as well in terms of development for next season and what they need to do. So hopefully I've done that justice. And, in terms of you guys then, as always, I just want to say, I always feel very privileged being able to make these videos, and the fact that people actually watch them and don't just go, oh, well, that guy just talks too long or whatever. I'm sure there's plenty of people, mainly younger people, who do think that. But I think, people kind of more my age probably appreciate a bit more in-depth stuff on things rather than kind of TikTok generation type of stuff. But, I'm always feel very privileged and very grateful to all of you guys who watch my stuff, who, hit the like button, who share, or even if you don't do any of that, but you do watch and enjoy, and you never posted a comment or whatever, just know that I absolutely appreciate your time taken to watch it and hopefully to enjoy it. Because it'd be weird, right, watching for an hour and a bit and then not enjoying the whole thing or any part of the thing. So hopefully, there are those of you who are enjoying. And again, just a massive thank you to you, because, I love doing this. I know I'm not always the most consistent in terms of getting everything out that I want to do. And in the past, I made promises of certain videos that didn't come about. But you guys are still stuck with me, and it's, for me, this is kind of my release. Doing this, watching the rugby is one part of it, but doing this is the other part as well. Just being able to talk about what I'm really passionate about, and trying to be as fair and even-handed about things as well. And hopefully that kind of comes across too. So I'm gonna leave it there, but you guys let me know what you think down in the comments.